It's Enlightenment Garden, end of August 2021, and today we're going to geek out a little bit on microclimates. So I've been growing a food forest in my backyard in the Phoenix, Arizona area for about 5 years now. I started seriously into planting fruit trees and edibles in my yard in 2016. So I often state that we're in USDA Garden Zone 9B. So what does 9B actually mean? So what that zone really is telling you is the extreme low temperature that your region can get. For us, that's 25 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, there are years where we don't go that low, and there have been times when my yard has seen temperatures dip below that, especially when you factor in wind chill. So how come there are people that can grow these plants that are rated at or even outside of that zone successfully and others fail? The reality is your zone is telling you a very small piece of the puzzle. Just the low temperature. It's not telling you the high, not telling you the humidity. There are a lot of other factors that go into an environment for a plant. So what I've learned over the course of the years growing here is that microclimate plays a crucial role in how successful you can be as a gardener. Knowing what the elements are of a microclimate and how to strategically influence those factors is really key. So, what is a microclimate? How do you know you have one? Basically, a microclimate is a smaller space within a larger area like your backyard that have different climate conditions. If you walk around your yard, even if it's a small yard, say 1,000 square feet, you will find these smaller pockets in your yard that differ from each other. So why do they differ? Well, one thing was the sun. Clearly, as the sun moves, certain areas are going to be hotter than others, and that's an important thing to know for your plants. The structures are also going to play a role in microclimate. Your house is a big one. You know, your house can cast shade during certain parts of the day. Other structures like a patio cover or a shed can also create shade. You might have a block wall. A lot of us in HOA communities, the builders put in block walls. Well, that block wall is going to absorb heat during the day, and then it's going to radiate off that brick, creating hotter spots. That block wall is also going to create wind protection. So your yard may not be flat and level. It may have some peaks and valleys. So in those areas where you have those valleys, you know, moisture has a greater ability to settle there, and it might be a cooler spot. It might be more humid. So even something as simple as the grading of your yard can make an impact. Can shift temperature, can shift humidity. And then your soil itself, you know, is it bare? Do you have rocks covering your soil? Or do you have mulch covering it? Depending on that situation, your temperature could fluctuate quite a bit. Obviously, if you have rocks covering your ground, you're going to have more heat radiating off. Mulch is going to be more insulating. Now, it should keep your ground cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter. So all those factors I just talked about, they're going to change as the seasons change as well. So it's important not to just look at your yard and kind of identify these factors at one time of the year, but to be looking at it all the time, observing it, you know, as time passes on each week. How do things change? So what's really amazing is once you understand your yard, all those little pockets, how they differ, then you can get strategic about your planting. Then you can select the plants that are going to do the best in those circumstances. And that's going to set you up for success. I'm going to show you some of my microclimates in my yard, and hopefully that'll give you some ideas on how to leverage what you have in your yard or even build your own. Let's start with this pond since it's right here. I did not put this pond in for, you know, building a microclimate for plants. I did this for relaxation. But I'm able to utilize this space because having a living body of water here, though small as it is, supports some of the tropicals. As you can see, I've got plumeria growing in pots all around this pond. And they're doing excellent in this microclimate because it does have a higher amount of humidity in this area than other areas of the yard, for obvious reasons. And you could do this on a smaller scale. If you've got a water fountain in your backyard, you know, you could put plants around that for a little bit more humidity. Just giving the plants a slight edge. With all these rains, my yard has really gotten a little overgrown, so it's hard for me to kind of pan and show the landscape at this point. Probably need to get a drone. But my yard entirely faces south. So it did have to put in a lot of infrastructure to create shade. It wasn't there. But there are some plants that you don't need to do that with. Fig tree is one of those. So if you have a hot location right off a wall, even off a corner wall, that's a pretty rough location for most plants. But there are quite a few plants that actually favor that kind of circumstance. Figs is one, pomegranates is another. So Mediterranean plants like figs, olives, pomegranates really are going to adapt well to a hot location, your hottest location in your yard. Some other options are Barbados cherries, fruiting mulberry, to a large extent bamboo. There are a couple varieties of bamboo that would prefer some afternoon shade. Quince also do quite well, and grapes, of course. So in those spots that are super hot, put some plants in like those, and you're going to cool things down. You're going to get fruit, and those plants are actually going to create shade. They're going to create microclimates for other plants. So those are all good options for that super hot, all-day sun location, right off of a wall, where you've got hardscape even. I always recommend mulching the soil, even for plants like those, but they can even deal with bare soil. Citrus, like this orange tree, stone fruit like your plums, apricots, and peaches, they can all deal with full sun locations, but they're going to look better if they get some afternoon shade. When fruit gets exposed to full sun, it can scald, and that can definitely degrade the quality of the fruit. So this orange tree, when it was first planted in this yard, 8 years ago, it was in full sun and had a rougher time. Now with all the other trees growing in, it's getting some afternoon shade. So those plants that I just mentioned would all do fairly well even without shade. One thing I will mention is with stone fruit, your apricots, peaches, and plums, we get a lot of winds in spring. So one thing you do want to think about is potentially providing a windbreak for those plantings. That's to avoid the flower and fruit drop. So you really maximize your harvest. So what about those plants that love heat, but they do not like sun after 10 a.m. in our summers? We're going to look at that next. So this area is on the eastern side of my backyard, still south exposure. And the plantings here are all mangoes. And these are all relatively young mangoes, newly planted. That there is a Malika. The one at the back is a Khazar. This mango in front is actually one that I've had in the ground for a couple years now. This one is a Namdok Mai. This little guy is a seedling Manila mango. This is another newly planted mango just a couple months ago. This one is a Glen. And I've got one more over here by the banana. This one was also put in the ground this year, and that's an Okrung mango. So these are all about 1 gallon to 3 gallon size, except for the Namduk Mai, which I've had for a couple years. Mangoes, of course, love heat, and they can even tolerate full sun, though they're not going to look their best. They really are going to look their best, and their fruit is going to be the best quality if they get that afternoon shade in our summer. Now, I mentioned 9B can get as cold as 25. In January 2019, my yard did get to 24 degrees. With wind chill, it was even colder than that. So because I don't have the natural climate the mangoes want, you know, I'm not in zone 10A, what I did here was I actually forged a microclimate that would be beneficial to the mangoes. I'm going to step back so you can see the environment that these mangoes are in. They're not in the middle of my yard in an open space. You can see it's actually quite dense in here, and that was all strategically done. I'm utilizing the canopy of other trees to provide shade to these mangoes during the summer. And in the wintertime, these trees will provide a biomass to help insulate these mangoes from frost. A lot of these subtropicals, it's not necessarily the low that it damages it, it's the frost getting on the leaves and the stems and the branches that kill it. So if we can prevent that naturally, clumping bamboo, the sea breeze, namely, I've got one right there, a clump there, I have one straight across over there, and then I have another clump of bamboo, old hamai, right there. So I've got 3 bamboos surrounding this mango planting. I also have moringa here. That gives some filtered light, again, more of a protection in the summer. And then another plant that I've utilized to help forge a better microclimate for these mangoes is Mexican sunflower. But during the summer, just amazing, provides all this cover. And you can see how large it can get. It can get up to 25, 30 feet tall. So when you're thinking of those plants that need the afternoon shade situation in summer, but then also require some frost protection in winter, the use of evergreen, large canopy plants is a good option. So something like mulberry that defoliates in winter is not going to be a very good protector, but bamboo and evergreen is, because it's not going to lose that canopy. And unlike a ficus tree that provides dense shade in summer, bamboo has a lighter leaf structure. You know, it sways in the wind. It provides filtered light to the plant. Because mangoes still need some sun in order to grow, so you don't want to completely shroud them in shade. Just like you wouldn't want to put up 90% shade cloth over them. So I'm really hopeful that when we do have another severe winter like we did in January 2019, that this strategy will work out for me. I've seen it work with other plants. Those that were protected by nearby plants didn't experience the frost damage that they had without that. So let's talk about another situation, and that is a plant that needs full shade when it's young. There aren't many plants that require this, but if there's one, it's avocado. A lot of people want to grow avocados, but they fail at it. And the main reason they fail is because they'll put this avocado into a situation where it's going to get hit with afternoon sun. And avocados just don't do well with that situation when they're young. While an avocado can definitely grow into the full sun here, it's not going to do that when it's this young. So knowing this plant needs full shade and also some humidity, we can plan for that, and that's exactly why I picked this spot. This gets full protection from the sun. It's got royal poinciana, clumping bamboo, out here I've got guava, protecting it from that angle of the sun. We've got more clumping bamboo on this side, you know, apricot tree, and then huge mulberry tree overhead. So this little seedling, this is a Brogden seedling, gets full protection, and because it's been put in the right microclimate, even after 2 months, this plant has doubled in size. It's looking really healthy. And when winter hits, the mulberry is going to defoliate, and that's going to provide access to the sun for energy. Then it can really put on its growth. So avocados are similar to loquats in that they can really put on a lot of growth in the cooler periods. I'm hoping this was valuable in learning more about microclimates, identifying them, planting the plants that make most sense for those microclimates, you know, really maximizing the potential of each area in your yard, and then also where you don't maybe have the ideal microclimate, how to build one by putting in canopy trees where needed to create shade for those plants that require it. We've really been blessed with an amazing summer, so get out there, enjoy your yards, plant some trees, and happy gardening.